Hello guys, welcome to another Airflow video. We know to use Airflow we have to start the scheduler as well as the web server. So to start a scheduler we have to execute this command Airflow scheduler and then scheduler starts, and to start the web server you have to use Airflow web server, and if you have the port number you can even mention the port number as well. So by default it is 8080 only. That's it. So when I executed this, both are executed. Now I came to my browser and I did the local host and the Airflow page opens, and this is how the Airflow page will be. We can go to the specific DAG which we have created in this previous tutorial. This is simple hello goodbye DAG. And we can go to the code here. We know we have declared the DAG here, and inside which we have the tasks. If you see here, first DAG created and then the task 1, task 2, and task 1 is nothing but a one Python operator inside which we are calling a Python code, and here again there is another task, and inside which we are calling another Python code, which Python code nothing but a method, and here inside which we are just printing. So this is how our simple DAG is, which we have created in our previous tutorial. So now let's go and understand few components in Airflow, and so that we'll get the background on how Airflow works. So now let's go to the PPT. So now let's see what is DAG. So DAG, think of DAG as a blueprint for your workflow. That's it. What needs to be done? I mean, what task needs to be executed and in which order it needs to be executed. That level of mapping or a blueprint is called a DAG, right? That's what we have seen. So here we have created a DAG and we have created multiple tasks, and each task is defined with our DAG, this variable. That's it. And we have created the hierarchy. So this is what the DAG is, right? The simple DAG. And now we know what is task. Task is an individual step in our workflow. Even here, these all are the tasks. Like this is one task, the second is another task. And what task does is it does some kind of action using some operator. So if you say a task is an individual step in your workflow, like downloading the data, processing or analyzing the data, sending an email, any kind of some code execution, anything can be a task. And how does it does? It uses the operators. Tasks are the building blocks of your workflow. What is operator? Operator defines what task does. It's like a template for task. Airflow comes with many predefined operators for common actions such as Python operator to execute the Python code, bash operator to run the shell commands, and email operator to send an email, and the sensors. Sensors are nothing but which waits for something to happen. So these are the multiple operators. So we got to know what is DAG, what is task, what is operators inside. We have many things like XCOM and all, which we will see in the coming videos. But this video sole intention is to check what are the Airflow components. Now let's see what are the Airflow components. Airflow is made up of components that work together to run your workflows. These components can be divided into two categories: required components and optional components. So let's first come and check what are the required components. We know we have started the scheduler, right? So what is scheduler? The brain of the Airflow. It decides when to run the tasks and keeps track of their status. So if a task is scheduled at 10 a.m., we know, right? We can schedule the tasks. So if the task is scheduled at here, if you see the start date, so here we have decided to start it. Even we can even mention the time as well here. So if the task is scheduled to run at 10 a.m. and that is being triggered at that point in time using the scheduler only. So scheduler is the brain of the Airflow, where every execution and everything happens through scheduler only. So now let's come to web server. So the user interface for the Airflow, we know, right? Like this UI which we are seeing is because of the web server only. Using the web server, we can see the workflows, monitor the task, manually start and stop. We can do start and delete or anything, right? Rerun and anything using the UI. So that happens using the web server. So the scheduler is the brain of the Airflow, which is responsible for executing, and the web server is where it acts like a dashboard, or where we can view everything related to our DAG. So DAG folder, we have seen already, we have configured the inside the config file, we can even configure the DAG folder, where we keep all the DAGs, and those DAGs gets updated in the metadata and can be viewed in the Airflow UI. So if you go to this Airflow page and inside this config, and if you open this config, if you see the DAG folder we have configured in this particular path. So whatever the DAGs or the .pufs we keep will be converted into DAGs using this folder. That's what it means. This is another component. The folder where all DAGs are stored, like a library where your workflows are saved, and metadata database. In the previous video we have seen how to configure the Postgre. Like what is the use of metadata database? Like all the information which you are seeing here inside the UI, when it is in progress, what are the previous runs, every information will come from some database, right? That's the purpose of metadatabase. And we have seen how to configure the Postgre database, because Airflow by default uses SQLite as a metadata database. So these are all the required components which we need to be aware of Airflow, and there are some optional components like worker, triggers, DAG processor and plugins. So let's see what are those. So what is worker? A worker is responsible for executing tasks assigned by the scheduler. Scheduler itself can execute, but in case if you want to offload that to some other external system where for the distributed setups and all, you can use it. In the simple setups, tasks are executed directly by the scheduler itself. However, in distributed setups, worker handles the task execution to distribute the workload. Workers take instructions from the scheduler, okay, so and execute the specific tasks. So now what are the triggers? A triggers handles default task. So for the scenarios where you have to wait for a file, or for scenarios where you have to wait for database trigger, or some kind of AWS queuing services, for all those scenarios we can use triggers. Instead of just making the worker up and running and wasting the resources, we can go with the triggers. And the next is a DAG processor. So for the simple things, it's okay, scheduler will handle it, everything. But in case if you want to go with distributed, then we can have the separate DAG processor as well. A DAG processor is responsible for parsing and serializing the DAG files into the metadata database. By default, this work is handled by the scheduler, but you can offload it to a separate process. Instead of the overloading the scheduler, we can even offload this particular process. When you have many or a complex DAGs, offloading this task prevents the scheduler from being overloaded. So what are the plugins? Plugins allow you to extend Airflow functionality by adding some custom operators, sensors, hooks or executors. We will see everything, what is sensors, what is operator, what is hooks and everything. So as we know, the plugin is some custom code. So that custom code becomes part of the Airflow features when we use that plugins. That's it. So these are all the optional components which we go when you have the distributed Airflow setup, and the required components are mandatory even for the standalone or the distributed Airflow setup. So now let's see how all this works together. Okay, so scheduler decides which tasks to run and when. That's the purpose of the scheduler. So which tasks to run and when they have to be executed. So web server lets you monitor and control everything from the UI, from the web page. So workers execute the actual tasks are executed in the workers only in the distributed setups. The DAGs defines the workflows and how the tasks are connected. So operators, we have seen the Python operator. If you want to run some EMR job, the EMR operator, some step function operator, or some bash operator. All operators are where the actual code or the things gets executed. So now let's see the deployment modes in Airflow. Okay, there are two. One is a simple standalone and the next one is a distributed. So now what is a simple standalone Airflow? In the simple standalone setup, where all components, the scheduler, web server, the metadata database run on a single machine. Like you can get 1:2 instance and install all those in a single machine. The tasks are executed by the scheduler itself using the local executor. So there are multiple types of executor, right? Serial executor, local executor and all. So in the distributed setups, we use the serial executor. In the local setup, we use the local executor. So it is suitable for the small projects or individual users due to its simplicity. So here we will not have the separate roles like a DAG manager, DAG author and all those. Like it's just a simple setup in case if you want to go with the basic Airflow deployment for a small projects and all, where you have the Airflow which monitors and does the stuff for the multiple projects and multiple teams will use the same Airflow. Then you can go with the distributed setup. So components are distributed across multiple machines, enabling security and better performance. Workers handles the task execution while schedulers focus on managing the workflow. So instead of scheduler doing all the jobs, and it offloads some of its tasks to the separate things, like where the workers will take care of the scheduling, because we have seen, right? If you see here in this slide, I have explained it. The scheduler offloads this worker task. The scheduler offloads this particular DAG processor and all those things. So here we'll have the user roles, a deployment manager, DAG operator users, One can log in as a deployment manager, one can log in as a DAG author, one can log in as an operator user. We can, I mean, in these distributed setups, we can even isolate the components separately. And now, instead of web server accessing the files directly from the DAG folder, we can restrict it to use only the metadata database. Here in this distributed setup, we can use the DAG processor, and the DAG processor will read the DAG files from the DAG folder and update them in the metadata database instead of scheduler doing in this distributed airflow architecture. I mean, this is ideal for large teams or environments requiring distributed processing and enhancing security, because we'll have the multiple roles and all, and the individual works are done by the individual component in the airflow. So these are all the few things which we need to be aware of. Like what are the components in DAG, the scheduler, web server, what is the DAG floor, what is the metadata database, what are all the optional components, what are all the workers, triggers, DAG processor and plugins. And as we have discussed, there are two types of setups. One is a standalone setup, or a simple setup, everything in a single instance, or in the distributed setup where you have the complex or the multiple teams using the same airflow, or a common orchestration airflow. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.